Another major terror attack rocks the West this week. We know 2 Americans are among the victims after explosions rocked the airport in Brussels, along with the city's subway. Dozens of people were killed, with hundreds of others injured in what's called planned attacks. Secretary of State John Kerry traveled to Brussels for counterterrorism talks with top European Union leaders. Kerry says the attacks underscore the urgent need for a unified front against the Islamic State, which claimed responsibility for the bombings. We've heard from the presidential candidates and their stance in fighting ISIS, but just how do we stop ISIS in this war on terror? And what is the threat to our homeland? That's our topic this half hour. We want to hear from you on our Fox 26 Facebook page. You can also weigh in on Twitter. Joining us in our newsroom is our Fox 26 senior legal analyst, Chris Tritico. We have Democratic media consultant Mustafa Tamiz and Republican strategist and public policy analyst Jackie Bally, along with a special guest, Abe Martinez, assistant United States attorney who has worked with Iraqi officials to prosecute several terrorism cases in northern Iraq. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Well, I think like so many people, we just feel helpless and like there's nothing that can be done after a terror attack like this. Solutions are definitely hard to come by.
You know, Sally, every time this happens, whether it's in the United States or worldwide, we always have this feeling that we are helpless. But just Friday, the Washington Post had a pretty good story about how ISIS is being beaten back in both Syria and Iraq, and they're losing not only a great territory, but losing people, and how we are capturing their communications and hearing that they're losing their will to fight. And so while it appears that the exporting of the bombing that we're seeing, they're losing on the ground, and that appears to be where the fight is being won. Abe Martinez, thank you so much for being here. You're an assistant United States attorney here in the Southern District of Texas. You have worked in Iraq with the Iraqi officials as a special envoy through the Department of Defense, correct?
I worked with the United States State Department
as
a rule of law advisor in northern Iraq.
And you've worked for many, many years as an assistant United States attorney, prosecuting people here, both here and internationally, right?
Yes, we prosecuted defendants here who attempted to join Al-Qaeda and did, in fact, join Al-Qaeda, as well as working with the Iraqis to do the same. That is, to go after ISIS terrorists, or the precursor to what was ISIS at the time.
So let me just say, and as a criminal defense attorney, let me just say I want to thank you for the service that you do to our country and for our Constitution, except for when you're putting my clients in prison. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You know, in the wake of what happened in Belgium, as Sally said, it seems that people seem to get the feeling that we're helpless in our fight against terror. You know, Belgium, it appears, and most of Europe, it appears, are light years behind the United States in that their CIA and their FBI still are not allowed to speak to each other like we were in 9/11. And so it appears that most of Europe is well behind the United States in preparing itself to defend itself. What do we do?
Chris, I think our viewers ought to take comfort in knowing that law enforcement here in the United States is very aggressive in looking at young people who've recently decided to look at ISIS as a way of expressing themselves. What that means is that the FBI is working feverishly with all intelligence agencies to identify those who would join ISIS and who would want to work on behalf of a foreign terrorist organization like that. I believe that here in the United States there's a very well-coordinated effort on behalf of all of law enforcement in conjunction with the military, with our intelligence services, to ensure that we don't have attacks like those that are taking place in Europe. Now, can I say that we're going to be able to prevent that? It's hard to say. The director of the FBI recently said that we can't stop every attack or every potential attack because there are so many folks that have decided to join ISIS.
Well, thank you for being here, and I too would like to thank you for your service. Another emotion that you're seeing with us is fear. A lot of us are very fearful of what's going on, and the fact that there's not an identifiable plan, at least in the minds of some, that can actually tackle this. We talked about different plans from the different presidential candidates. You heard that discussion. Is there any validity to what the Donald Trumps of the world is saying? Because his numbers will continue to rise because as much as people are fearful of what's going on, and there's not an identifiable plan, his numbers will continue to rise. So what do you say to the Donald Trumps of the world?
Well, setting aside what the politicians are saying and speaking as a law enforcement person,
yes,
there's a panoply of alternatives that we are relying upon. We're relying on the military to do its part. So we have the military apparatus in place. We have prosecutors working with law enforcement in the same way to prosecute those who would join ISIS and who would commit criminal activity on behalf of ISIS. We're working with the community, with the Islamic community, to identify people who would become radicalized and would want to join Islam. And we're working with schools and with others to educate folks on what Islam is versus what radical Islam is, and how to identify individuals who might want to join an organization like ISIS.
Okay.
So I would say that given all of the different options that we have to prevent terrorism, I would say that we're probably as good as we have ever been in trying to prevent terrorist attacks here in the United States.
All right, Mustafa, hold your question. Let me go to Sally, and we'll come back to you. Let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media.
Okay, we're going to take a look at our Fox 26 Facebook page and read you some comments that some people have left this week. John says, Western Europe alone has the capability to wipe this scum off the face of the earth. Why are they letting themselves be sitting ducks? A couple people weighed in on the travel aspect. Reggie says, not planning to visit Europe anytime soon. Leah says, travel's my biggest passion. I refuse to let these people take that away from me. And then Joseph said, the governments are allowing these terrorists to run about in the places they want to move in and take over, just like Iraq and other places. He says this is getting crazy. Innocent people are dying, yet they refuse to take these guys out.
You know, that last tweet said that the governments in Western Europe are allowing these people to come in and do this and not paying attention, which kind of leads back to the question I asked at the beginning. They are not at the position that the United States is in getting ahead of this.
I think the difference is we in the United States look a lot more closely at refugees. They have to be vetted to a degree, unlike in Europe where, for the most part, the borders are open. So one way to identify potential terrorists who might come to the United States would be to identify who it is that's coming in. And so I believe that the political candidates on both sides have said that one of the things we have to do is ascertain who's coming to the United States and get more information so that we know who we're dealing with.
Mustafa?
Again, thank you for your service.
Sure.
So as you look at in this, there's a conversation in our country that says that we in law enforcement and others are politically correct and we're trying to hold back and we're not being aggressive. Is that a fair criticism of law enforcement, or do you think that it's the opposite?
I don't think law enforcement looks at the situation the same as the average person or as critics would. Law enforcement authorities are looking at potential terrorists without respect to what political party they're from, or without respect to political correctness. The primary focus is to look at the threat, identify the threat, and if possible, eliminate it.
Now, we're almost out of time, but I want your opinion on, should the United States be taking a more aggressive role in putting troops back into both Syria and or Iraq?
Having been in northern Iraq and watched how our military folks operated, amazing how good our soldiers are. And it's really to their credit how well, at the time that we had forces there, that we were able to stabilize the country in a way where ISIS was on the run. They were fearful of the military. There's one thing terrorists understand, it's might. And they understood the might of the United States Army. And that's one thing that they chose not to go up against.
Abe Martinez, I want to thank you so much for coming in and giving us your time today.
Sure.
Happy Easter. Sally, we're going to leave it right there.